Sticker shock is back at your local gas station.
Higher and higher. Gas prices just
As the
keep
global
going
economy
up.
has
Angeles
recovered,
is the
National
largest
average for a
urban
gallon
has
of
oil
regular
fallen back
field
over
gasoline is now
$90
and it's one of the only places on Earth.
And for many
where active
consumers,
oil wells are also
$3
valuable
price in a
residential
dry
real
spell
estate.
There it is.
Here we go.
Black gold, baby.
No water.
Look at that. This is why people came to LA. Oil.
The greater Los Angeles area is no average county, in the same way as Los Angeles is no average city. The county is composed of many separate, thriving cities: Torrance, Long Beach, Pasadena, and of course, LA proper. It is a county that was built sporadically, not formed around one specific source of water as most cities are. Therefore, with the expansion of popular cities in Los Angeles County, transportation became key to the character of the area. Freeways and cars were necessary, public transportation underutilized, and everybody needed one thing to keep their engines revving from one city to another: oil.
In the early years following the turn of the century, the black gold that gushed from the ground and soaked the earth was a source of billions of dollars for the men who fought tooth and nail to own it.
Luckily for Los Angeles, oil was waiting cool and dark beneath the soil of the expansive Los Angeles basin. The first oil well was discovered on June 3, 1921, by what would be called the Shell Oil Company.
After 1921, drilling for oil spread feverishly through the LA basin. Major drilling stations were formed in Wilmington, Huntington Beach, Torrance, and Beverly Hills. These derricks were often propped up conspicuously in the midst of sprawling urban communities. These 30,000 active wells, producing nearly 230 million barrels of oil per year across 55 oil fields, allowed for the growth of the airplane, shipping, and automobile industries across the ever-growing greater Los Angeles area.
With the growth of the oil fields across Los Angeles County came the opportunity for great wealth from the resource. Oil tycoons such as Edward L. Doheny, Charles Canfield, and J. Paul Getty broke into the most lucrative industry in the area and prospered greatly from it. Doheny created the Pan American Petroleum and Transport Company, which is now the Pan American Western Petroleum Company. Doheny convinced railroads to switch from coal to oil, enlarging the California market twofold. Getty Oil was believed to possess over $3 billion in the midst of the Great Depression, a large chunk of that money coming from the thoroughly successful Pacific Western Oil Company. These individuals acquired monopolies of the LA oil scene.
Then was the background for one of the most widespread scandals on the federal level of government that the U.S. had ever uncovered.
Tycoons gave way to scandal. Lust for money from oil led to corrupt bargains and behind-the-scenes illegal dealings. The most infamous of these was the Teapot Dome scandal Edward Doheny caught himself in.
Teapot Dome scandal? Well, that was a hairy situation. What happened was Albert Fall, the Secretary of the Interior under President Harding, gave me 2 oil fields for cheap, about as cheap as ice in the North Pole, without competitive bidding, which got us into some pretty deep trouble.
Dateline, Washington, D.C., October 10, 1927. In a moment, the story.
The media paraded the oil industry scandals and the fights between major oil companies. Teapot Dome was known as the greatest scandal in the history of American politics. This unrest and sensationalism in the press permanently tainted the face of the oil industry. Books such as Oil by Upton Sinclair and movies such as There Will Be Blood by the Coen brothers continue to make an enemy out of the oil industry to this day.
In the 1960s, urban residents, fed up with the appearance of oil wells in their backyards and sick of the corruption associated with big oil companies, protested the building of new derricks and fields in Los Angeles County. Because of this, most of today's active urban wells predate the 1960s. Still, Los Angeles is among the top oil producers in California, and thus in the country. So while the Los Angeles population has continued to skyrocket, oil production since 1960 has remained relatively low.
Today, with the negative spin on oil and the growth of support for green energy in Los Angeles, a new trend has started: camouflaging oil derricks. Whole Foods bag-toting, Birkenstock-wearing Los Angeles residents tend to forget Los Angeles' involvement in the growth of oil in the United States, but that history is there. Shrouded behind building facades and hidden under floor canopies, those oil derricks still stand tall.
Each time that I return, that my happy heart keeps laughing like a clown. I love those days.